Looks like we're ready to rock. So, happy Monday, everybody. Hopefully you had a good week last week. It was a down week. A lot of the snaps and tweets I was posting out last week were all about using last week to get ready. I actually really like those type of weeks when everybody else is kind of not doing anything. There's not a lot of activity. There's not a lot of stuff coming into your inbox. Love those weeks to get prepped for the rest of the year, the rest of the summer, whatever, and do some planning, house cleaning, get your list right, get your contact strategies down, everything else. So with that, I did a lot of house cleaning myself, made sure that all my lists were right, made sure that my strategy was set for the rest of the year. And one of the things I wanted to tap in today, and by the way, for those of you who are joining live here, feel free to hit me up with questions. I'll answer whatever you got. But the topic today is the whole topic of cadence, which has taken on a whole new meaning these days with all these sales automation tools and, sales efficiency tools, but unfortunately they're being used as sales automation tools. So as an example, I'll use the kind of likely known ones, right? The sales loft, the outreach, the tout apps, the yeswares, all these different tools out there. I love them from a sales efficiency standpoint, right? Because they help you send mass emails out at scale. You help track everything. You can track the response rates and split test and do all sorts of stuff that I absolutely love. The problem is when they're being used as sales automation tools, and pretty much the same as any one of the marketing automation tools. So Marketo, Eloqua, Pardot, you name it. I don't understand why sales reps are using these sales efficiency tools the exact same way that marketing uses the marketing automation tools. It's just doubling up on the noise out there, and it's doing absolutely nothing to differentiate you. And so I'm going to talk about the positives of the cadence approach. And for those of you who aren't aware, it's sending multiple emails out in a contact strategy, right? Not just relying on that one email or that one voicemail to get that response, but sending out a group of them, 5, 6, 7, 8 touches, whatever it is, and mixing it up, email, phone, whatever. But, really having that contact strategy, because I've read study after study that talks about how many touches it takes to get in touch with somebody these days. I've heard 10 touches, 5 touches, whatever. I read a report the other day that said 35 touches. It takes 35 touches to get in touch with somebody these days. I'm saying if you reach out to me 35 times, I'm going to call the police on you, right? But the point is, regardless of the study, I've never seen one that says one, all right? One touch, one email is the best, or one voicemail is the best. So it makes sense to have a contact strategy, right? Why? Which is, by the way, it's also not worth spending a half an hour writing email, right? Writing one email. I've always been a huge fan of doing customized, thoughtful contact strategies and doing research on somebody. And I'd say probably 3 or 4 years ago, you put 20, 30 minutes into writing a really well-crafted, solid email, and it got that much better of a response rate. So probably 15, 20, 30% response rate if you did it right. Now, because things have been so content has been saturated out there, marketing automation, everything else, the customized email still works, but it's no longer 15, 20, 30%. It's now more like 5, 10%, which is still way better than the 1 to 2% average. But it's no longer to me about that one email. It's about the contact strategy and telling the story and having 5, 6, 7 different things to say to somebody to get their attention. And so the positives of cadence are just that, right? It gives you the ability to reach out to somebody 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times and doing it in a way so you're not always scheduling those activities, right? So these cadence tools really help us with that. And it allows us to measure it. Now, unfortunately, most reps don't, but it allows us to measure the effectiveness of certain emails, of certain contact strategies and everything else. So I'm a huge fan of telling the story, okay? But what's driving me batshit crazy right now is that every single rep is just using them and putting template emails in there, and they all look exactly the same. I probably get about 5 or 6 of them a day from reps, and I can already tell, okay, this is the first touch, this is the second, this is the third, this is their fourth. Here comes the breakup email, the whole, because all of them, that's what they are, right? The first one is maybe something relevant to me or my persona or something like that. And then the next one is, hey, did you get my first email? Then my third one is, hey, bubbling this one up to the top. And then fourth one is, almost like a guilt factor of, hey, I guess you're not interested in this. And then the fifth one is the inevitable breakup email, which is, hey, 1, 2, or 3, are you really interested in this? And you're just super busy, you're not interested, and you want me to take you off your list, or you're stuck under a rock and you want me to call the police or something, or the alligator email, which just drives me crazy, right? And it just came to mind recently because a kid did this to me recently, and I actually feel bad because I lit off on him. But here's the email that just set me off and prompted this conversation, because I've been seeing it too often and it's just getting worse. And so I wanted to throw it out there of the issues with it and then how to fix it. All right. So this one, the subject line, is this goodbye? And then it appears that you are not interested in the demo to learn more about the product. And that was actually look like the customized part, but then it went into a template, which was, Dear John, it appears you're not interested in a demo to learn more about our product. The #1 rated sales tool on, and I won't mention it. I know you can streamline it. It's going to help you do all this other stuff. And effectively, it's a guilt trip of why I'm not responding to this kid. And my response back was, what's holding me back from this responding is bullshit templates like this that I know are being automated, that you're putting absolutely no thought into, and isn't customized to me in any way, shape, or form. And the kid actually got back to me. Like I said, I feel a little bit bad because he was like, rough day. And I was like, actually, no, I'm having a great day, but I'm really getting annoyed with these type of emails because I just think it's putting sales reps in a position to get replaced. I mean, you've heard me talk about it before about how the death of the average sales rep, right? About how I'm worried for sales professionals who are going through the motions and just pressing play and, hitting that cadence and hitting up template emails or making generic cold calls, asking BANT questions and press and play on demos, all that stuff. I'm worried for them because I'm watching them get replaced with technology. Again, if you haven't seen it before, look it up. Shakespeare.ai. It's an artificial intelligence bot Gmail plugin that helps you write fully customized targeted emails by just pointing that bot at an article, and it writes them better than I can. So if a computer's already doing that better than we can, we just got to wake up and say, okay, well, what's our value, especially on the front end of the sales process, right? Sales reps who are doing the SDR role and just cranking out template emails, I'll be shocked if that role is considered sales moving forward, right? Actually, Jamie Shanks put together, Jamie Shanks Sales for Life, just check him out, a really good, great company, trains on social selling. And he put out a blog post recently that says, is the SDR role killing sales? And his point is that SDR used to be a breeding ground where it was SDR was the intro role to sales, and then it was BDR, and then AE, and then you'd get to a closer. But now what happens is SDRs, as they go up through their promotion, when they get promoted, it's either, hey, you can go in to be a sales rep, or you can be an SDR manager. And if you're 24, 25 years old and you get the option to be a manager or a sales rep, what are you more proud to call home and tell mom about, right? Well, I'm more proud to call and tell them, hey, mom, look, I'm a manager. So a lot of reps are going down this SDR track, or I'm seeing a lot of SDRs bounce from SDR role to SDR role to SDR role and kind of almost be professional SDRs, which there's nothing wrong with that. But what we're seeing here is that track move into, just lead gen with all these tools out there. And I'm sorry, if you're not a fully rounded sales rep, if you don't know how to manage a sales cycle, and if you don't know how to close, you're not really in sales. You're not a fully rounded sales rep. So that's where Jamie was talking about, is it killing sales? Now, I don't think it's killing sales, but I do think it's reshaping sales. I think that SDR role is actually going to become a much larger function in organizations. And there's going to be SDR, SDR manager, SDR director, SDR VP, but it's not going to be under sales. It's all going to report to marketing or operations, and it's going to be more about playing with the technologies and the tools than it is really about engaging with the client and selling. So my vision of SDRs in the future is, you ever seen those old switchboard operators where they're plugging, like the kind of the old school ones where they just plug and stuff? That's my vision of SDRs moving forward here, because all these tools are going to facilitate that. Now, my fear here, and to Jamie's point, my fear is that used to be the feeding ground for BDRs and then full-blown AEs and sales reps. So where is that now new generation of true sales reps going to come from? I don't know. Or maybe we'll go back to kind of the old school of sales reps just getting in and having to handle everything and evolving a lot faster that way, but who knows. Anyways, but back to my point of the cadence stuff here. Great usage, but that kid that he reached out to me, he actually, after I ripped into him, he's like, actually, John, hopefully you can appreciate I didn't send out these emails. You know, my marketing department did. I get the responses, and I've actually been telling my team or my manager and the marketing team, look, this isn't, I don't want to do this. I want to be more thoughtful around this, but they're forcing me to do this. And they're saying, hey, you know, the negative feedback, the positive feedback will way outweigh, or the positive responses will way outweigh the negative, feedback that you're going to get. And so I kind of, I felt bad. I was like, look, I get this. It's not you. And I appreciate the fact that you're trying, and at least you tried to fight that fight. So do me a favor, send this over to your manager, and here's more ammo of why I think those cadence things are actually doing way more harm than good to our brand. Because again, it ends up being spam. There's once you see one of these cadences, you start to pick up on all the other ones, and then once you start to pick up on all these other ones, you start to tune them out. It's just like any technique or any approach. Like once that technique is used on you, it might work the first time. Like that breakup email of 1, 2, or 3 stuck under a rock. The first time you get that, okay, fine, I'm not stuck under a rock, whatever. But the very next time you get that email, you're never going to respond to it again. You're going to realize it's a sales technique, and it's the same thing with these cadences. Okay. Now, that's the negative side, and I'm just going to beg you out there, if you're going to use these cadence tools, at least do it this way, okay? Now, my preference is a fully tailored one, where you sit down and you do research on an account, like a tier 1 target account that you want to get into, and you come up with 4, 5, 6 different things to say to them all at the same time. And that's actually what I recommend is, instead of doing research on somebody and looking for one thing, because what happens there is you tend to look for one thing and you ignore all the easy stuff. So you're like, all right, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. Ooh, there it is, right? You write this one Mona Lisa looking email and you fire it off, and a half an hour later, you've written one email, which is a little ridiculous. And then you schedule an activity 3 or 4 days later for touch 2. And now when that activity comes up, you're probably already 40 to 50 activities past due. And now you got to go and do research again and come up with another thoughtful email. It's like, I don't have time for this. Hey, did you get my first email? And so that's how that works. But if you sit down all at the same time and say, hey, you know what? Let me come up with 4, 5, 6 different things to say to this client, right? And the persona as well. So, you go after the VP or the CEO or whatever, look on their LinkedIn profile, look at their website, look at the news and events, and try to tell a story. And say, okay, now that you have 5 or 6 things, you can put that together and say, okay, what's my first touch, second touch, third touch, fourth touch, fifth touch, and tie them together so they make sense. Because that's the key to a contact strategy, in my opinion, is the unique factor, is saying something different every single time. So you're coming at them with a different point of value each time. For instance, I do the 2 ways people tend to prospect are, hey, we do sales training, broad elevator pitch, right? We do sales training consulting for Fortune 500 companies. It guarantees the results you're looking for at every stage of the sales process. Gross. Nobody responds to that. Or they do, hey, this is John Barrows. We do sales training, consulting. We do prospecting, meeting execution, negotiation, objection handling, and closing. Those are the 5 things I do. And I could probably wrap a nice, tight little message around that, right? Email, call, whatever. But say I send you that email or leave you that voicemail, and you don't respond. What's my next email? What's my next voicemail, right? Hey, it's me again. Not sure if you got my first email, but we do sales training, consulting, we do prospecting, meeting execution, negotiation, right? Third, just touching base, checking in. I'm not sure if you got my right, and so that's where that comes from. But if I don't know anything about you, my first email is gonna be about prospecting. You don't like that one? I don't care. My next call to you is going to be about negotiation. You don't like that one? Whatever. Here comes meeting execution. And I'm just going to poke, right? It's our job in sales to throw darts. Let marketing do the broad-based messaging. Our job is to throw darts and try to pick up on things that make sense, because you might miss and miss and miss and miss, but then all of a sudden you might strike that nerve. And if every one of those messages has been value-oriented, been focused on me as a business or my company or my persona, you might, like I said, you might miss and miss, but then you might strike that nerve that gets me to pay attention. And that's really where the cadence comes into play of how you can do it as effectively as possible at scale, right? Again, going back to it, my preference is do a bunch of research on somebody, come up with 6 touches, very tailored, thoughtful, and then schedule activity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and take the content that you've already researched and put it in those cadence tools. So when they come up, you already know what you're going to say. Now, I understand that we all have volume numbers to hit here, okay? You know, it's 50 dials or 100 activities or whatever. So that's just not realistic. I do think we should do a certain amount every single month. I personally pick 5 accounts once a month that I go deep on. It's a 2-hour recurring meeting on my calendar once a month that I go and pick 5 accounts, go really deep on them, come up with 6 touches for each of them and apply that contact strategy. That's once a month. But then to get the volume up there, what you want to do is at least focus on some type of commonality within your database. So for instance, go after a very specific persona, you know, CIOs in the healthcare industry or VPs of sales in the SaaS industry, and sit down and do a little bit of homework on what these people care about, right? And, you know, all you got to do is Google search CIOs, healthcare, priorities 2017. See what's on their plate right now. Or VPs of sales, SaaS industries, priorities 2017. There's a blog post, there's something out there where somebody's talking, or some VP of sales is talking about the challenges moving into this year. Then come up with 5 or 6 different messages about the different aspects of your solution that support somebody in that persona. So, you know, again, prospecting, meeting execution, negotiation, objection, and closing. Most of you listening to this, I promise you, you could carve up your value proposition in at least 4, 5, 6 different ways. My recommendation is to carve it up and to give yourself multiple reasons to reach out to people so you're not saying the same damn thing over and over and over again. Now, if you put these persona-based messaging together, now you can start to poke away and you don't have to say the same thing over and over and over again. And you can run a list of 50 or 60 people in your territory that fit that persona and let that cadence run and then measure it against another cadence, you know, to a similar persona. You know, you don't have to do personas either. You could do other stuff like, you know, any type, like I said, any type of commonality where they're all using a certain technology or they're all using one of your competitors or whatever. Just something that you can run a list where everybody fits a similar profile, if you will. And, you know, 50 or 60 of these. So once a month is what I do. I pick, you know, VP of sales, SaaS industry that use Salesforce, and I run a list of 5 or 6 different templated emails. And I put them into SalesLoft and I let them run and I see what happens. Now, another recommendation here is by doing that, you can actually make one of those touches or 2 of them a call. So say you have 6 touches and, you know, you come up with 6 different reasons to reach out to a VP of sales in the SaaS industry that uses Salesforce. Okay, well, you're going to send email 1, email 2, and then make a phone call, right? And that phone call can be now a call blitz. Because if every one of those fits a similar persona, then you can say the same thing on the calls and gain some momentum and learn something. For those of you who've been paying attention, I've talked about call blitzes before and how the best way to run a call blitz. I personally think that scheduling phone calls throughout the day is a drastic, or making phone calls throughout the day and sprinkling them is a drastic waste of time. You know, you make 2 or 3 phone calls, send an email, write a proposal, that type of thing. I think phone in that scenario, drastic waste of time. Where I know phone can be effective is when you hyper-focus for an hour. I call them power hours. And not only do you just make phone calls for an hour, but you make phone calls into one very specific persona with one very specific message for an hour. Right? Because that way you can prepare. So now, because you're going after a persona, not only can you come up with a message that you can repeat and get better at, but then you can also come up with 2 or 3 questions that are relevant to that persona. So instead of saying something like, dude, tell me about your priorities, you can say stuff like, hey, you know, thanks for taking my call. The reason for my call today is VPs of sales in the SaaS industry are talking to us and they're showing us, or we're showing them how to drive these type of results. I'd love to have a conversation. When can we schedule that? Oh, I got time now. All right, well, I'd rather schedule it later so you're prepared for it. But here's a few questions I have. Typically, VPs of sales in the SaaS industry are telling us that their top priorities in 2017 are X, Y, and Z. Are those yours? even if they're not, the fact that you showed you kind of know what their world is all about tends to open up the conversation. And then ideally you have like a case study or a story to tell them there to help qualify. So now you run everybody, a list of everybody that fits that profile, and you call them all up and say the same thing. Again, you can gain momentum, you can learn something, and you can have some flow to it. You know what the objections are going to be, so you can prepare for those. So now, if you have that cadence that's more of a targeted, not fully tailored, but targeted based on a persona or something like that, you can now start to make some, email, call blitz, 20 to 30 dials in an hour, no problem. Email, call, another call blitz right there. And you can start to run these on a consistent basis. You can do one of these once a week, for crying out loud. And that is how you use cadence tools effectively, is to be targeted with your approach, not templated with your approach. So for those of you out there who are still cranking out template emails and using these cadence tools without putting any thought into them at all, please, I'm begging you, at least target them. At least target them, because you're no different than marketing if you're just going to send out templates. And by the way, marketing is going to do it better than we can, because they're going to analyze the results and they're going to make the adjustments. Where sales, probably the biggest weakness of all these cadence tools from a sales rep's perspective is sales reps really don't look at the data. They just use it to use it from an automation function, but they don't look back at those templates and those cadences and say, okay, which one yielded the highest response rate and why? And now let me dig into that and tweak it, right? Marketing knows how to do that. They've known how to do that for the past 10 to 15 years at this point, and they're way better at it than we are. And so I'm just begging y'all to stop sending these bullshit template cadences out there and put at least some thought to it, all right? Structure it, focus on a persona, sit down, come up with 5 or 6 different messages and let it roll, okay? So with that, I'm actually going to be writing that blog post. I'm actually going to put these emails, the ones that I ripped on, into a blog post coming up on Thursday with something similar here that we're talking about. So take a look at that. You'll see the actual email in there. And if you want to see a good version of a cadence, in my opinion, take a look at my blog. It's I wrote one a little while ago called "Finally a Contact Strategy I Can Appreciate." And this was one of the first times that somebody sent me a targeted email cadence that was not, it was obvious that they did not go on my website and do a ton of research on me or LinkedIn profile, but they profiled me really, really well. And so if you want to see what I mean when it comes to a thoughtful cadence that leverages things, go ahead and take a look at that, all right? So I'm going to take a question here. Do you recommend, so Camille, how you doing? Thanks for chiming in. Do you recommend a different contact strategy for the government market, or would you suggest, or would your strategy be the same for every industry? It'd be the same. Now, my reasons might be different for the government, right? And the information might not be the same. So for instance, I'm going to sit there, if going back to fully tailored, targeted, templated, if I'm doing a tailored one, for the typical public sector or private sector, it's, you open up a new office, you launch a new product, you look for those triggers, right? Merger and acquisition, something like that. Now, for the government, for the public sector, it's different, right? There's not, those triggers aren't as valid, but you have stuff like, maybe broader picture stuff like regulations, shifts in or budget timing, those type of things. I always say the budget objection is crap, except for in public sector. I sold to the government when I was selling Xerox, and there was definitely times a year where you had to get in there so you could get in the budget for next year. So you can do that as far as a timing standpoint. But you want to look at all these agencies. You want to look at all these. You still want to do the same research. You still want to go and look at them and say, okay, what are some of the things that they're working on? What are the strategies? The good news is that they're public, so their strategies are public. It's just you got to find them in different areas. So with that, that's the fully tailored one. The targeted one, again, sit down and think of what is a CIO in the public sector, what are their challenges right now in dealing with all the malware stuff that's out there, the security of documents, like all those type of things, and figure out ways that your solution can tie to some of those challenges. I would absolutely, Camille, do a Google search on whatever their title is, government, CIO, Treasury, priorities 2017, and see what comes up. Right? There's publications, there's stuff talking about it. And so go find that stuff And it might be a little bit more broad as far as, okay, they didn't have a merger and acquisition, but hey, here's some challenges that they're faced with. So now let me come up with 5 or 6 different messages related to that persona specifically and put together a cadence and go after it that way. So great question. I would still use the cadence. It's just different information and maybe more public-oriented information as far as trends, regulations, those type of things, laws that are putting in place, or things that are coming down the pipeline that are going to start at a certain date, so you can help them prepare for those type of things. So thanks for the question. So if you have any other questions, feel free to chime in here. But I'm going to bounce out maybe a little bit early if there's no other questions, because I got about 4 webinars I got to do this afternoon for some clients, and then I got to take off for New York, Atlanta, and Houston this week. So follow me on Snapchat to find all the wonderful snaps I'll be doing along the way, just chronicling the journey as usual. And and also for those of you who didn't see it, I've launched the J Barrows store a little while ago, a couple weeks ago. It was just in response to a lot of clients. So I got my "Make It Happen" tagline. And a lot of my clients and reps were like, man, do you have any like gear around that? Because "Make It Happen" is one of my favorite, little taglines there. And so I'd like, no, but why not have one? So I put up a store. You can go to, I think it's store.jbarrows.com. I'll put it in the post here that you can go click on that and take a look at some of the gear that's out there. So I got some posters and T-shirts and all that type of cool shit. So anyways, any help spreading the love would be greatly appreciated. Hopefully you got some value out of this one. Hit me up anytime, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. It's all John M. Barrows. So M as in Michael, all one word. And I respond to every snap you hit me with, every question you email me about, and every, Instagram post or whatever it is. I'll respond to all of it. And by the way, it's all me. So it's not somebody, Autobot doing this response. It's all me. I really do genuinely appreciate everything that you guys share of mine and all the questions that you have here. So let's try to make this week a great week. I know it's a down month. July is usually kind of a slow month for sales. Don't accept that. Go out there and make it happen, everybody, all right? Have a great week. Later.